I belong in the UFC. You know, I am among, if not, I truly, full-heartedly believe I'm the best bantamweight in the world, and I need to be in the UFC to prove that. So I'm happy to have the diehards, you know, like the support and stuff, but I'm looking forward just to proving it on Saturday why the people support me, why I'm as, you know, touted as I am.
All right, so Patchy Mix finally made his long-awaited debut in the UFC this past Saturday, and oh my god, dude, this performance was so bad, it is gonna go down in MMA history. I don't remember the last time that a champion from another promotion joined the UFC and shit the bed as spectacularly in their debut as this guy just did. Like, there have been cases where outside champs lost their UFC debut, but Mix's ineffective and utterly lifeless performance is in a league of its own. This dude seriously has the footwork of Stephen Hawking and the head movement of, well, Stephen Hawking. Much like many of you guys, I totally thought that Patchy was going to win this one. I never really followed his career all that much, but by many people's accounts that watched Bellator, he was supposed to be one of, if not the best fighter that wasn't in the UFC. And I don't like throwing this term around too loosely, but Mix losing the way that he did is undeniably the biggest UFC fraud check of 2025 and maybe even the decade. Speaking of fraud checks, seeing as this is like the 10th Bellator champion that has crashed and burned when they touch down in the UFC, I think it's safe to say that Bellator as a company continues to get fraud checked as time goes on. And yeah, in this video, I'm going to be talking about all this and more. But first, of course, let's talk about the fight. I'm not going to break down every round because that would be pointless for a fight like this, so I'll just give you guys my overall thoughts on how things played out. Because if I didn't know who this guy was, then I definitely would have never believed that he's a former world champion. This guy's striking is so bad. The way that he throws his punches and especially his kicks look so stiff and awkward. His head movement is completely non-existent to the point where I started to become convinced that he likes being punched in the face. And yes, his footwork is really bad, but even more so, he just seems completely incapable of moving his body parts independently of one another. He moves and fights the way that I do in my dreams. Goofy striking aside, Patchy is a grappler. He has 13 submission wins, yet this guy went for one takedown the entire fight, and it was a god-awful takedown attempt. This guy is a submission specialist. That's the one thing that he's elite at. That's the one thing that brought him to the dance, but instead he chose to have a kickboxing match with a guy who proved he was better at kickboxing than him within 2 minutes of the fight. Bro, your last name is literally Mix, and you didn't try to mix in some takedowns? Now, I've seen people say that Patchy froze up and crumbled under the pressure of the situation. Obviously, I've never fought in the UFC, but I'm sure that a huge amount of anxiety comes along with fighting in the biggest promotion in the world under the brightest of lights. This might be the truth, who knows, but if you're asking me, I just think that the guy walked into the promotion overconfident and cocky.
Three-time world champion. This guy's a journeyman fighter. I will him up, bro. I'm gonna him up. Look at his goals. I'll submit him, and I'll submit whoever's teaching him jiu-jitsu. I'll submit the whole crew.
Hilarious to me how before the fight he was calling Mario a journeyman and completely downplaying his skills, but after he loses, he starts gassing him up in his win streak to make his performance look better than it was. Sorry, Patchy, your ego cashed a check that your head movement couldn't cash, and you can't switch up on us now. He either overestimated his own skills or underestimated his competition, or both, and I think he got a reality check because of it.
All my family and friends are here. We're going to have a humongous feast on Friday night. I'll have like 30 people out at dinner, and then I'm looking forward to Saturday, waking up, shaking out, and going out there and putting a master class on. And if it's not a master class, I don't care. I will go to war with this kid all day of the week.
Yeah, is the master class in the room with us, Patchy? Also, the only war that took place on Saturday was the one that you had with basic motor skills. Somebody call Ito Portal because Mix would really benefit from playing touch butt with some dork in the park.
Head right here. I wasn't going to watch this from home. Like, hell no. I got an opportunity to be here, and I got an opportunity to take this guy's win streak, and that's what I came here for. So 100%, you know, I'm looking through Mario Bautista and the opportunities that it gives me on Saturday night, and I needed to be here for it, you know?
Never a good sign when a fighter literally says that he's looking through or looking past his upcoming opponent. I feel like if there was a handbook for MMA fighters, there would be a chapter dedicated to not letting yourself admit that you let yourself get caught up in everything that happens after you win your next fight. There's something about a fighter saying that they're looking through their opponent that causes them to lose all of their powers. And make no mistake, this was not a slip of the tongue that he said spontaneously. He doubled down on it at the pre-fight press conference.
No, I'm not being overlooked. But look, there's the attention right there. I'm not being overlooked. I get all the attention, obviously. But no, it's fine. He has these aspirations, but he's going to have to get past me Saturday night.
And I'm looking through him, bro. I'm looking through him.
I know that Mario Bautista has been getting a lot of hate lately for how he fought Jose Aldo, and I get it. I wasn't a fan of the game plan either, but the guy's actually a pretty good fighter. He's well-rounded, he has good fight IQ, and he's really good at sticking to his game plan. And sure, maybe if I was Patchy and I had already beaten guys with bigger names than Bautista like Sergio Pettis, Rafion Stotts, and Kyoji Horiguchi, I would probably think that I was going to cruise through this fight as well. This fight kinda reaffirms the notion that I've had for a while now that a lot of the UFC contenders would be championship level in Bellator. Speaking of which, how many times are we going to have Bellator champions walk into the UFC with tons of hype surrounding them, only for us to see them kind of be mid? Just off the top of my head, there's been Will Brooks, who went 1-3 in the UFC, Zach Makovsky went 3-4, Hector Lombard went 3-8, Lyman Good went 3-3, Joe Soto went 3-5, Ben Askren went 1-2, Patricio Pitbull is 0-1, and Michael Chandler is 2-5. And I know that some of these guys like Hector, Ben, Pitbull, and Michael joined the UFC when they were a little bit older and past their primes, but what about the other guys? The other dudes that I just named made the jump from Bellator to the UFC when they were well within their fighting primes. And out of the like 10 plus Bellator champions who've come to the UFC, I'm pretty sure the only one that's been able to maintain a winning record is Eddie Alvarez, who is the only fighter in MMA history to hold both a UFC and Bellator title. Of course, props to Eddie, but that is a very bad look for the Bellator roster. The truth is, Bellator has always been the minor leagues. The matchmaking, the depth, the intensity, it's just not the same. You can rack up all the belts and submission wins you want in a B-tier promotion, but when it comes time to dance in the UFC, there are truly levels to this. And that is not to say that I think every promotion that isn't the UFC has been outclassed roster-wise. Strikeforce is a perfect example. When the UFC bought them out, almost all of their top middleweights came over and stayed at the top of the division for years, with Luke Rockhold becoming champion. Strikeforce produced other UFC champions like Tyron Woodley and Daniel Cormier, and this is already like 10 times better than what Bellator's done, and that's not even mentioning guys like Jacare Souza, Yoel Romero, Jake Shields, Gegard Mousasi, and so on. How about the WEC? Obviously, their bantamweight and featherweight rosters introduced the divisions to the UFC, but even when it comes to lightweight, they produced two champions who defended their belts in Anthony Pettis and Benson Henderson. But they also gave us Dustin Poirier, Cowboy Cerrone, Korean Zombie, Carlos Condit, and the greatest of all time, Chael Sonnen. Even in the current era of the sport, Ryzen gave us Yuri Prohaska, who became UFC champ. I'm pretty sure Kayla Harrison's the only fighter to win a PFL and UFC title, and 1FC gave us RDR, who I can see fighting for a title one day, maybe. My point here being Bellator kinda sucks. Of course, they've produced good fighters along the way, but when it comes to true elite talent that would be able to succeed even at the highest echelon of MMA, they've proven time and time again that their roster is a couple levels below the true top promotions. And I'm not even saying UFC level. Bellator wasn't even close to Prime Strikeforce. And for a guy like Patchy Mix, who had a great looking record and who touted himself as the greatest bantamweight in the world, he and we found out that at least based on his performance at UFC 316, he's really not even close to where he thought he was. This really was the worst debut for a champion coming over from another promotion in UFC history. It's not like he got caught by a lucky strike or lost a close split decision. He got outclassed start to finish by the number 10 ranked guy in the division. Could you imagine if he was given an immediate title shot against Merab, or if he was even put up against Umar Nurmagomedov or Pyotr Yan? This guy would have been stretchered out of the building. And if it sounds like I'm hating on the guy, well, maybe I am. But it's not because I dislike him, I promise. It's because based on his resume and his credentials, I was expecting him to make immediate waves at bantamweight and make an already incredible division even more incredible. But instead of being an immediate title contender that had the capacity to put on bangers against Sean O'Malley or Corey Sandhagen, we got a guy who genuinely looked like he should be fighting on Dana White's Contender Series. It's just a bit of a letdown. Whenever a champion from another promotion joins the UFC, I'm never preying on their downfall. It's actually quite the opposite. I love big shakeups in MMA, and guys like Justin Gaethje and Yuri Prohaska, who were both able to hit the ground running when they came to the UFC, have become fan favorites because of how much they switched up the status quo upon their arrival. But after his performance on Saturday, Patchy has done absolutely nothing to make bantamweight more fun. He didn't move the needle at all, and everything is exactly the same as it was before he joined the UFC, and that's disappointing. The guy talked a big game, had this aura of confidence around him all throughout fight week, just to step into the octagon and shit the bed. But you know what? At 31 years old, I am optimistic that he can get his act together and eventually turn this disaster into a story of redemption. The thing is, though, I'm not really sure what you do with him from here. Do you rebuild him on the prelims? Do you feed him to another striker to really test if he's UFC caliber at all? I'm not really sure. What I do know is that if he's serious about capturing UFC gold, he has a long road ahead of him, and after this Saturday, frankly, I'm doubtful on if he can do it. Anyways, that's the video for today. Definitely let me know what you think about Patchy Mix. Who would you match him up with next if you were the UFC, and what do you think caused him to have such a bad night against Mario Bautista? As always, if you like the video, then like the video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. I appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.
All right, I gotta speak up for Patchy Mix, because if you only watch the UFC, then you have not seen Patchy Mix fight. It's as simple as that. I've called 4 of Patchy's fights. 4 of them. I have watched Patchy Mix get rid of 3 people accumulatively in less than 90 seconds. Top fighters. Patchy Mix can do everything, but he will do his finest work on the ground. He is very long, he is beyond awkward, and he can find positions that nobody else does. And that's on the ground. He'll knock your ass out standing up.